let's bring in Republican Congressman Tony Wied of Wisconsin for more. Congressman, thank you for coming on. President Trump campaigned on a promise to lower prices, but economists are warning this approach will raise prices for Americans and could even lead to a recession. I know you put out a statement praising the tariffs, but are you worried at all about these short-term consequences?
No, not at all. Look, President Trump was hired by the American people, and there's nobody that was more transparent throughout the campaign or worked harder than President Trump in talking about the solutions for our economy and focusing on America first. And tariffs were something that he talked about as a tool to negotiate free and fair trade, to bring more jobs and manufacturing back to this country, ultimately to help the middle class, drive up wages. And that's what we're seeing right now. We're seeing investments that are planned over $3 trillion into this country. That's what we need to do to focus on this country first. That's what the president said he was going to do. He's doing it, and I believe in his negotiation.
You serve on the House Committee of Small Businesses, and ABC News spoke with the owner of an auto repair shop in Glendale, Wisconsin, about the impact of these tariffs. I want to play some of that interview for you.
Will you have to raise prices for your customers?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
By how much?
I guess the minimum is going to be 25% on all parts. What we see is it kind of freezes money, freezes the willingness for customers to spend because they don't really know the future.
So what's your message to business owners and consumers who are looking at that and are concerned about rising prices?
Well, again, what President Trump said he was going to do was to help the middle class, ultimately bring more jobs and manufacturing back to this country. We saw yesterday folks that work in the auto industries, folks that are working in factories that are excited about jobs coming back to this country, investment coming back to this country. Could there be some short-term pain? Potentially. But ultimately, long-term, we need to get back to free and fair trade. Look, other countries have been taking advantage of us from a trade perspective for years and years, and nobody has said anything about it. President Trump wants to be able to export, be able to drive our economy by making it free and fair.
It could take years for businesses to move to the U.S., to build factories, to create the infrastructure needed to create the jobs that you're talking about. So how long do you think we should expect, or how long do you think is an acceptable timeline to have to deal with this short-term pain that the president talked about?
Well, I think we need to be patient. We need to trust, and the American people voted on President Trump in getting our economy back on track and ultimately focusing on America first. And so there does need to be some patience. There could be some short term. But again, long term is what we need to focus on and ultimately help our middle class. We've been deindustrialized as a country. We need to bring industry back to this country, long-term growth. And I think that's really important, and so do the American people. And again, I trust President Trump's judgment in ultimately helping our economy.
World leaders are speaking out against these tariffs, with China saying they'll endanger global economic development and supply chain stability. Germany's vice chancellor says they could set off a spiral and pull countries into recession and cause massive damage worldwide. What's your response to that?
My response is, why are the tariffs so high for us? You know, this has been going on for quite some time, and we haven't been operating in a fair way. And that's what President Trump is talking about with reciprocal tariffs. So I think they need to get in line. I think we need to encourage folks to build and grow their businesses and ultimately invest in our country. And that's what I'm hired to do. That's who I work for, and that's who the president works for, is the United States of America. And we just need to get back, like I said, get back to a more level playing field, ultimately get back to free trade across the globe. But we need to protect our businesses so that we can also export in a fair way.
And Congressman, in the 80s, Republican President Reagan gave a big speech against tariffs, against this kind of trade war, not only for the concerns that are being voiced today by economists, but also because of the impact on innovation, essentially saying if you isolate the competition that drives companies to create better and better products. What's your response to that? Are you concerned at all about an impact on innovation here?
Well, we've seen tariffs work very well earlier in the 1900s, right? Even before 1912. We're in a tough world right now. We've been taken advantage of for a long time. And, it's not a situation that anyone wants to be in, but we have to protect our country. We have to protect our businesses and incentivize people to build right here in this great country. And that's the predicament we're in right now. President Trump has talked openly and very candidly about his approach, and I believe in President Trump and his negotiation, and we're ultimately going to help our country for the next generation.
And Congressman, before I let you go, I also want to ask you about the Supreme Court election in Wisconsin, because Judge Susan Crawford beat Judge Brad Schimmel, who you supported. Fewer people voted than in the presidential election, but Brown County in your district showed a 5-point swing in favor of the Democratic-backed candidate. Do you worry about what that says in terms of voter priorities, and are you concerned about a challenge to your seat in the midterms?
Well, I think, the 2023 state Supreme Court, it was a very similar outcome, certainly disappointed in the outcome, but, ultimately President Trump's agenda, his policies are what won in this November election, and that is our job to continue to put together those policies, help this country. I'm very confident in the 2026 elections, and again, we're going to continue to do what's right for America, and that is my ultimate goal, and it's going to ultimately help everybody.
All right, Republican Congressman Tony Wied of Wisconsin, we appreciate your time today, sir. Thank you.
All right, thank you.